if I would run for office. And like, Dave Roberts frequents adult novelty stores. Well, my first answer would be, well, it's a local business.
You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong.
Welcome to episode 187 of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. I'm Dave Roberts. With me is my podcast partner in crime, writer, journalist, owner of the Georgia Virtue, Jessica Szilagyi.
Hi, Dave. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How was
your week?
It was cooler. A lot of rain at the end of the week. This week supposed to be cooler temperatures, so allows me to catch up on stuff. Like I think I talked about before, is I get, because I don't have an office person, and I said it right that time. I get behind on billing and things like that, and it allows me to catch up on stuff and tie up loose ends, things that I say, oh, I'll get to that when it slows down. Well, it's slowed down, and now I have to do it. So
do you hate office stuff?
I do. I despise it.
See, I don't like doing it, but I love the accomplishment of getting that stuff done. Because, we've talked about it on the show, when I write an article, I might spend, a week researching something and drafting it. Of course, there's stuff I write in an hour or two, but when I work really hard on an article, I put it out there and then it's done. Administrative stuff, at least it has a curing time while it's you don't have to do it again for a little while. You've cleared it off the list of to-dos for a while. I like that.
Well, we have to do QuickBooks in a couple days, which sucks. Look, QuickBooks is a necessary evil with what I do, but it is 3 hours of Connie yelling at me saying, you can't deduct that.
Yeah.
You cannot deduct trip to the liquor store. But I gave a bottle to a customer. They're not going to let you deduct that. And she is super straight-laced. If it was just up to me, I'd be sitting in federal prison right now. Because I would deduct stuff like fishing trips going, oh, it's a company retreat.
Well, that would make really neat, when you got out, of course, it would make for some good shows to talk about your time in federal prison.
Oh, no, the show could open up with, you have a call from inmate 4571.
Yeah. I would enjoy that.
That'd be a great intro to every show. So how's your week, Dave? Got shanked again.
Yeah, or we don't have a show this week because Dave's in solitary.
Yeah, Dave's in the hole. So, ushering dirt to the U.S. Attorney's Office is new, sitting at the back of the bus. In rural Screven County last week, the son of late Julian Lewis, along with civil rights activists, announced a 60-plus mile march for justice in Lewis's honor. Yeah.
This is the same story we talked about with the trooper when we talked about the grand jury indictment and everything, or lack of indictment, grand jury shopping. I mean, we've talked about it a lot on the show. But I guess the reason that, the case was presented to a grand jury at the end of June of this year, and we're still hearing about it. And there's the family of the man who was killed. They won't let it go because they're planning on filing a wrongful death suit against the state of Georgia. And, now they're accusing the grand jury of being a runaway grand jury, and they failed to indict Jake Thompson, and just it's constant. They're not getting a whole lot of mainstream coverage. Our local TV stations, of course, give them a microphone for some odd reason, but they're really on more tradition or alternative outlets, doing podcasts out of state and things like that. But now the whole point of this march, they're doing a 60-mile march over 5 days. It started last Thursday from Sylvania in Screven County to Savannah to get the attention of the U.S. Attorney's Office because they want the U.S. Attorney to investigate the runaway grand jury, quote, how they were picked and how they ended up not indicting. And then they want like civil rights violations, that whole process.
Well, Sherman would be proud.
Yeah.
On their march to the sea.
Yeah.
I think the symbolism of that, it may be lost on them. I don't know. Hopefully they don't go burning crops.
Mm-hmm. Well, they actually hired security, supposedly, or they said they did. They said they did on a podcast that they were going to hire security because, I guess they're afraid that people are going to harass them. And, I don't know what's in store for the weekend, but I can tell you that on Thursday, Friday, and Monday, most people are at work. They're only walking 12 miles a day.
Right. Look, the only reason I would harass them is if they block traffic.
And they're straight up walking out in the middle of the road. And one of the reporters was doing a little trot alongside of them in the rain with their ponchos on, all dramatic and everything. And she's like, nearly a dozen people walked with, Brooke Bacon, which is his son, in this call for justice and everything. And I counted 8. That's not almost a dozen. I'm glad she doesn't work at a bakery. But they just continue to hype this up. And now the thing that's frustrating to me, and I talked a little bit about it, on social media and stuff Thursday, I'm disgusted that they want the federal government to swoop in and override what the community decided. That's the entire premise of the grand jury and a jury, is to have your peers. And I don't like the local officials, but they're duly elected and they guided them through the process. And this is the end result. And now you want the federal government to come in and offer you a remedy and override all of that because you didn't get the outcome that you want. And you're claiming that it's racist and the system is oppressive. So you want to use the most oppressive and most racist entity that ever lived to come in and help you? Disgusting.
They're more interested in the result than the fair process.
They don't care how they get it.
Right. And look, I lost my mind driving in the Keys because it's just a 2-lane road, and they gave a permit to a bike race. So it was 30 miles, 15 miles an hour.
That's brutal.
It is. Now think about getting stuck behind these yahoos.
Well, and they have a little RV behind them too. That's, I guess, so if you get tired, you can ride for a little while, and air conditioning and food and water and all that. But
we call it the meat wagon.
Well, okay, but that's if you were serious. I used to go door to door for campaigns, and nobody drove an RV behind me. I had to pull a wagon. I wore tennis shoes, and I pulled a wagon that had a cooler and snacks and all the stuff I needed. I didn't rely on somebody else to.
Well, when we went on ruck marches and stuff, there was a meat wagon that would, if you fell out, there was a medic in the meat wagon that would take you in, and of course you failed at the ruck march, but they would take you in and hydrate you and all that stuff. I don't really have a problem with that. Plus that provides a buffer from cars that are coming up behind them at 55 miles an hour, that they see this big object with flashers on.
Okay, well, don't ride in the road.
Really? Exactly what I'm saying. They want the imagery of walking down the road.
Yeah, they said it's the furthest march in state history for this type of thing.
Yeah. The Union troops would disagree. When they marched through Georgia liberating slaves. So I think they probably disagree on that one. They marched a little bit further and faster, carrying more. Man, I don't have a problem with the demonstration. If you feel strongly about something, I think he's trying to trade on his father's name. First of all, he should probably change his name to Julian Lewis Jr. or something, because Brooke with an E. I don't know.
Well, my thing though is that, do we want a justice system that operates on pressure? Like, that's how this whole thing started and why it's been such a cluster the entire time, because the arrest was made within a week of it all happening before the investigation was done. Like, the entire time, all of this is operated off of public pressure, and the grand jury is what was the roadblock to furthering it on. That's why they're mad, because they weren't getting, he didn't get bond initially because of public, they were worried about what the public was going to do, not what he was going to do. He got arrested because of the public pressure, like all these things. And now they want to continue on with that. And I don't want a justice system because I don't want the U.S. attorney to do something because they saw people marching on the street and walking, carrying dirt as a symbol. I think that's weird.
I have no problem with them blowing off steam. I'd like them to be out of my way, but if they want to go blow off steam, it's fine. Look, we talked about before the show a little bit about justice. Like, we all believe that Casey Anthony killed her baby. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't proven at trial, period. The prosecution was unable to deliver a convincing case to that jury. That's just the way it is. The justice is imperfect. But we have protections in place, and we have a system in place to protect the innocent, and that's just the way it is.
Well, and now, these attorneys they're defense attorneys in another case in my county, one county over, where they have a black client who killed a white girl. And if these types of things were happening in that case, they would be in front of they have a gag order now, but they would be losing their minds.
Right. And look, no, I do not want a justice department or a system of justice that bows to political pressure. And that's what this is. The judicial branch is supposed to be separate, completely separate. And it is supposed to, justice is blind. Justice does not see if the victim is black or white. Justice does not see if the perpetrator is black or white. Justice is only supposed to weigh the evidence. And we forget that.
We don't.
Well, you and I do. As a society, we forget that.
Well, I think it's just, I think it's unacceptable that these guys are lawyers and defense attorneys. Like, if I was a defendant in a case and one of them was representing me right now, I would be like, you got to go.
No, they're attention whores.
Yeah.
Get their face on TV and pick up more clients. I know I'm cynical, but that's the way it is. It's the Gloria Allreds of the world. That anytime she's off to fly somebody else. I was sexually harassed. Boom, Gloria Allred is there, right there in front of every camera.
Do you agree with the statement that people who are doing these types of things are doing it because they're not getting their desired, like they're not getting any traction on it through the proper channels, the quiet channels?
I think it's opportunistic more than it is idealistic for the people out front. Mm-hmm. Is they grab onto the story, and it's a chance for them to get in front of the cameras. It's a chance for Brookie there to have his name associated with civil rights, and to have his star begin to rise.
Well, they said that the grand jury failing to indict, which again, it just irritates the heck out of me, because failing to indict suggests that like they had to indict by default, as if that is the only,
Yeah, that's the only outcome that was
right. That it was just a procedural thing where they had to go in and check a box. But he says that the grand jury's actions were worse than his father being murdered, that they murdered hope for America.
Oh, good God.
Yeah.
So why would anyone think delivering dirt to the Southern District of U.S. Attorney? I mean, you said just 56% of Americans can name all three branches of government, and that's a 15-year high.
Yeah, like we have people ushering dirt because only 56% of Americans can name all three branches of government.
That to me is
horrifying.
Huge failure of our education system. Huge failure. That leads to all sorts of government abuse. When you don't understand the supposed separation of powers.
Well, that's why we are where we are. Like, that's why people think what Biden is doing, and I know we're going to talk about him in a little bit, but, like, that's why people think what he's doing is great, because they're like, yeah, do it. What do you mean he's not supposed to just... Everything from the CDC and eviction moratorium, all of that, like...
Right, because it's what they want.
Yeah.
Yeah, when your guy is issuing executive orders, you think it's great. Yeah,
They have zero appreciation, though, for the process that was put in place, as if, like, these things weren't put in place as guard rails and protections for the people. Like, government didn't used to do anything for the people except protect the people. Like, what was outlined, the framework was to protect the people from the government.
Right.
And now
74%. Yeah, 74%, only 3/4 or close to 3/4 correctly stated that the First Amendment protects the freedom of speech.
I hate them.
You're talking about more than a quarter asked knew that the First Amendment protected speech. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. It's amazing to me. But only 56% knew it also protected freedom of religion. 50% knew that it protected the press, freedom of the press. 30% the right to assemble. 20% the right to petition. 20%.
The right to assemble does not surprise me, though, because how many times, between free speech zones and how often we hear people say, like, they don't have the right to be there. Like we said, there's been lots of case law about obstructing traffic and being in the roadways and stuff like that. But even we said, like, they don't have to do it like that. But you also said, I'm fine with the demonstration. There's plenty of people who don't think that people should be able to gather.
Oh my God. Or that, yeah, this is where you can speak. Here's your free speech zone. Otherwise, shut up.
Speaking of the right to assemble and everything, have you watched the trial of the Chicago 7 on Netflix?
No.
It came out in 2020, but I watched it this weekend. And it's about the 1969 trial where the federal government charged 7 people, obviously, with conspiracy and some protests in Chicago at the 68 Democratic Convention. Super, like, I highly recommend it. The judge was really something else. But it's like, what's crazy is, like, you're like, wow, that wasn't that long ago, and look at how bad our system was. And, I don't want to spoil the ending. I don't know if people know about the case at all, but it's you think that, like, we're that far removed from it, but we're not. Like, we are still charging people and trying people for very similar things and it's them against the government, the full force of the government. And a lot of it has to do with the right to assemble.
Well, I'll make sure when I go on vacation, take my Roku stick and watch it.
You should.
I'll have time. Yeah, well, I'll have time. It's either that or watch Spanish TV.
It was directed by Aaron Sorkin, and I think that he does a good job with. I think it was one of those movies that was produced and was supposed to be, like, in the theaters, but then the pandemic happened, and
and Netflix got it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Sorry,
it's
I
really
was too
well
busy watching Joe Exotic like an idiot.
Well, it's okay. I mean, you can make up for it now and report back.
Well, he said 6 in 10 Americans, 61%, incorrectly stated that the First Amendment protection of free speech means Facebook must permit all users to freely express themselves on their website. Researchers explained that the First Amendment protects citizens from government censorship, but not social media companies, and their platforms are private entities.
Yeah. People, they have a hard time with this one.
Yeah.
And we've
despite
talked about Section 230 and everything. I mean, we've...
Oh, yeah. Despite being explained, 66% of conservatives, 61% of moderates, and 55% of liberals all believe that the First Amendment covers what people say on Facebook. Oh, good God.
Well, and it really doesn't bother me, or it doesn't bother me. It does bother me. It doesn't surprise me that the conservatives are at the top of that list because of, given what is happening on Facebook. Like, I feel like in conservative circles, we see posts like, oh, they're censoring me. And some, I mean, it's a lot of artificial intelligence and stupid computer programs and flagging stuff a lot of times. But they do seem to be censored more than liberal commentary. But Facebook still has the authority to do that.
They do. And if you're anti-vaccine, you put something up, poof. There comes something at the bottom going, learn more about COVID-19 vaccine. Or if you try to post or even forward a post that may even make a brief mention of the disease, it pops up with this mentions COVID-19. Mm-hmm. Do you want to continue? Well, I wouldn't have hit forward if I didn't want to continue.
Right. It's very Big Brother.
Yeah, it is. Oh, yeah, it's. What we thought Big Brother, the thought police was going to be in 1984 is, fact checking now. And while people are a little bit smarter about how government works, they still elected Joe Biden, and now they're suffering the consequences for it. For the first time since elected, Biden's poll numbers sunk into the negative last week.
It's about time. And negative polling doesn't mean like he had a negative 20. It just means that more people disapproved than approved of the job he's doing.
Right. You got 42% approving and 50% disapproving, according to Quinnipiac University National Poll of Adults.
Which tanked from August when he had a 46% approval and 43% disapproval.
Man, Democrats approve 88%. While Republicans
7% didn't approve. Like,
yeah, disapprove. Republicans.
No, I was going to ask, do you remember with Obama, like, did he ever have that wide of a range?
I don't remember. Maybe after Benghazi. And towards the end of his presidency, there was a higher disapproval rating. Mm-hmm. And that comes with candidate fatigue. After 8 years, people are ready for you to go.
Yeah. I just think that 7% disapproval from your party is extremely low, even given...
Oh, yeah. Republicans disapprove 91% and 7% approve. And independents scored disapproval of 52% to 34% approval.
Which is odd to me. Does that mean that 19-20%? I didn't hear the numbers specifically, but somewhere between 15 and 22% have no opinion at all as independents. How do you not have an opinion on what's going on?
Either you don't know, and look, with all the other opiates we have for consumption of media, if you don't pay attention to it, you turn on Netflix, you turn on Hulu, you don't turn on the news.
I don't turn on the news.
Well, you are the news.
Okay, but I don't, I mean, no one invites me to anything. I got to go find it.
Right, because you look.
Yeah. I guess I don't understand how you, it always baffles me. I mean, I'm envious of the people who can truly like disconnect and have no idea what's going on around them. But like, how? Like, how do you escape it completely? Between social media and television and ads on streaming services and even mailers and newspapers and stuff on tables at coffee shops. Like, unless you live in the woods, which sounds
it's
wonderful.
also partly not want to be put on the spot. So some people be like, I don't know. Haven't made my mind up.
Okay, well, they shouldn't be allowed to vote then, because you know what? Take a stand. Have an opinion. I'm not looking for Mr. Milquetoast to elect my next president.
That's what happens.
No kidding.
Or, the poll workers elect the next president. Biden scored the worst on foreign policy.
Not
obviously.
surprising.
Yeah. Negative score, 34% approve, 59% disapprove.
They got really specific on this stuff, on the questions. Like, they asked him, do you approve of his foreign policy? Then they asked, do you approve of his handling of the military? And then they asked specifically, do you approve of how he withdrew from Afghanistan?
Yeah,
and
that one was pretty stark. Yeah. And far less undecided on that one. 31% approval, 65% disapprove.
Well, I don't think Democrats can really deny. I mean, they didn't really say much of anything, but they couldn't deny it. It was piss poor.
Oh, yeah. When you see people falling off of airplanes, you see Taliban flying helicopters and driving our vehicles. It's very hard to not have an opinion about that. I really worry about the 31% that approve. And those just have to be people that despise Trump, that are going to approve of anything he does because they hate Trump.
It's scary.
There's nobody with any logic that saw that withdrawal and said, yep, that's good.
Yeah.
We out this bee. Yeah, those people are total ideologues, in my opinion. Total ideologues, and just don't care what Biden does. They just hate Trump that much, and that's a hard number for 2024, because that 31%. I mean, Biden could go burn the American flag while tap dancing on it, and they'd be like, "Yep, that was good job." Does not matter. He could start a war with China. 31% would be like, "Yep, they had it coming." So that's scary.
Well, it's also scary because it's just from like an allegiance standpoint of oppression and tyranny, and I mean, like the things you talk about, yeah, they would be terrible, but like you're also talking about people who would sit quietly and let their person do as he pleases to harm American people. That's what's terrifying.
To spite the other guy.
Yeah.
Now, this is an interesting number. 54% say they approve of leaving Afghanistan, while 41% say they do not.
That really surprised me. I thought 41 was really high. Unless we don't know how they asked the question.
Right, we don't know how to ask the question. And look, the plan that the Defense Department had was to leave 2,500 troops to operate anti-terrorist operations and continue to train the Afghan military. So I don't know. I'm glad we're out, but I do not like the way we got out.
But at the same time, it's kind of hard to like comprehend not wanting to leave Afghanistan after 20 years. Like, I mean,
well, but that number is bolstered by Americans being stranded, and again, those images on TV of the Taliban taking over, right, women being beaten in the streets, stuff like that. So
people who can't separate their emotions from the facts.
Right. And look, I understand it, but that's got to be where that number's coming from, is the constant flow of information, of the loop over and over of women being beaten in the streets, putting back into burqas, the stories of girls not allowed to go to school, women can no longer go to work. And, that's where that number comes from, is that we should have stayed and helped those people. It's got to be. 62% say they believe the U.S. will go back to Afghanistan, and 28% say we won't.
Well, 28% are really stupid, because that was seems like it was the entire point of the exercise.
What, to go back?
To establish a need, yeah.
God, I hope not.
I hope not too, but it's kind of hard to argue after what we saw that there was any other intention.
What's stark about a lot of that is the tens of thousands of Haitians we have crossing the border. How in the hell are Haitians getting into the Mexican border? Getting to Mexico to cross into Texas? Mm-hmm. And what would stop a terrorist from doing that? So yeah, that's we may have something else coming, and if it comes out of that area, Toby Keith will sing again, and we'll go back in. Huh.
The Dixie Chicks are already dreading it. Although we don't call them the Dixie Chicks anymore, because we're woke. Yeah. They're just the chicks, but
yeah, they're already flying to London so they can make a statement.
Mm-hmm.
Response to coronavirus is mixed.
Shocking.
48% approving, 49% disapproving.
It's right down party lines.
Yeah. Handling of the economy. Biden received a negative 42% approval. I'm sorry, a 42% approval and 52% disapproval.
I mean,
huh?
That's probably wait, what was the number for disapproval?
52. I'm guessing those are the taxpayers.
Well, I was about to say, those are the people who haven't been receiving unemployment and who have been rocked by this crap.
And people that look at the $3.5 trillion bill they're trying to ram through with additional taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Including a tax on your holdings. So,
this is in that mega thing you just mentioned. Have you seen the thing about lowering the balances of banks, the bank transactions that they want to monitor and report to the IRS?
600.
Yeah. Holy shit.
And that's cash or check.
Yes. Do you know how much that's going to drive up the costs of having a business account or a checking account?
Oh yeah. Plus, look, $600 isn't enough to do anything.
Well, mortgage, some people's car payments.
If I go to Biloxi for a weekend, I pull out more than $600 in cash.
I was baffled. It was one of those things that I honestly thought was fake news when I saw the headline and I read it, and then I looked it up and sure enough, it was accurate, and I'm like, this is hard to believe.
This is why they want 80,000 new agents.
Sure.
Look, right now a CTR, currency transaction report, is 10,000 and a penny. It has to report. Then they have a suspicious activity report that the banks look for things like structuring, where you go to one branch, deposit 5,000, go to another branch, deposit 6,000, go to another branch, and there's a team that looks at that and says, well, yeah, that's structuring, or they come in every Friday and deposit 9,000.
Right.
And it's every Friday. That's suspicious activity report gets sent off to the IRS, and if and when the IRS decides that it's suspicious, they go and seize your assets, and then you have to fight. You are presumed guilty, and you have to fight to get your own money back.
No way.
No. Ooh, shocking.
And they're going to lower that to $600.
Yep.
That is terrifying.
Yeah.
And that's like
they're
a
trying-
massive, I mean, I wouldn't agree. I think the 10,000 is too much, but I don't think we should have that. But if they wanted to lower it to 5,000, at least like, I mean, there's still a larger number that a lot of people don't meet even on a month. I mean, think about like the average income and things like that. Like,
no. 10,000. It's been 10,000 since the 80s.
yeah.
This is why we don't have $1,000 bills.
I mean,
because they want 10,000 to look like 10,000.
Inflation, we should technically like have it higher.
Yeah, it should be $100,000.
It should be nothing.
Yeah, it shouldn't exist at all. It was once again an emergency. An emergency brought this about. It was cocaine in the 80s that brought this about because they were traffickers and stuff were buying hotels with cash. Have you ever seen the movie Blow, where Johnny Depp is counting money? He's like, just weigh it. He's like, I'm not counting again. It's close enough. And he's just filling this house full of cash. That's what they were going after, and they used a perceived crisis, in order to take away the rights and monitor the activity of average day Americans.
So wait, hold on. Are you saying that after the crisis, they never undid it?
They haven't yet.
Wait, so like, is COVID a crisis?
So they say.
Huh. So a lot of what's happening might never be undone.
No, of course it won't.
Of course it won't.
Of course, it just that's not how they operate. So, a candidate for state representative in Savannah wants a statewide curfew for minors to help curb crime in Savannah.
I wish we had a siren we could play that like set off an idiot alert.
Moron alert.
Yeah.
Clinton Young is one of 4 Eastside Savannah candidates vying for the post left vacant with the death of longtime Rep. Mickey Stevens.
Well, and Mickey Stevens didn't attend one day of session this year in 2021. Like, they had the best representation ever. He didn't do any harm.
Almost like Vernon Jones was the rep.
Yeah, totally. He didn't show up one time, and granted, he was sick, and he passed away, and, I'm super sorry to hear that, but, yeah, here we are. So these people want to finish his term, and Clinton Young ran against him last time. He's also run for city council 3 times. He's lost every time. But one of the reasons he's running, he wants to expand Medicaid, but his big focus is he wants to crack down on crime in Savannah. So he wants to bring in the Georgia State Patrol like Atlanta has, and he wants to set a statewide curfew for minors of 10 o'clock.
Yeah, quote, it's 10 o'clock, and with the pandemic out, can't talk. If a child is not coming from an after-school activity, a ball game, or for a job, they need to be in the house. You need to be in the house at 10 o'clock. We need a curfew for the children at 10 o'clock.
If I had children, I would take them out, and I would take them out every night and stand in front of his house at 10:30. Just to spite him.
What a jackass. Look,
and why do the rest of us have to suffer because people in Savannah can't keep their kids under control?
What was your curfew at 17 years old?
11:30.
Right.
But that's because that state law came in and said you couldn't be driving after 11. So even if I was riding with somebody else, that still stuck.
Depending on what I was doing, yeah, midnight.
Of course. It depended on what I was doing, who I was with.
Yeah, just depending. Yeah, when do you plan to be home, son?
My mom used her best judgment as a parent and weighed the circumstances and the risk, and she made the decision herself every time.
Oh, wow. Parenting.
Yeah, I know. It's wild. She was really rogue.
Yeah. And she's so understated, too. This is a good time to remind you that these are our opinions and not those of anyone not on the show or any respective company for which we may work, own, or otherwise associate ourselves with on a regular or irregular basis. You can also find other episodes and relevant stories over at thegeorgiavirtue.com. An out-of-control, tech-based anti-privacy headlines.
It was a
Law
bad
enforcement,
week.
law enforcement officials have a new tool. It's a practice called information through geofencing.
Yeah, there's all kinds of apps out there that ping your location, like that do it privately and ones that do it outwardly. Some of them just collect information, kind of like how our pictures have location data on them when they take them. Others, there was one down here in South Georgia that pinged all the businesses as you went by and let you know when there were coupons, and all that information was tracked. They hosted all the information and so that type of thing, they would basically be able to map where you went and when and at what time you were pinging past all those businesses. This is not uncommon. Lots of things do it. But law enforcement uses it as a blanket way to investigate.
Yeah. And look, almost everybody, I would say almost a majority of people use phones to navigate. Mm-hmm. Your Google app or your Apple Maps updates constantly, unlike a GPS that you buy today and stick on your dash, or one that you have in your dash that was last updated in 2019. Mm-hmm. You go into Google and say, this is the address I'm going to, or this is the place I'm going to, it'll give you a warning. It's going to close within an hour of your arrival time.
Heck, it tells me if there's a wreck or if there's construction or if there's a cop.
Right, yeah, Waze. Absolutely. It's a useful tool, but not just for us. For geofence warrants, anyone in a certain place at a certain time becomes a suspect and is subject to further investigation, which could mean giving police even more of their user data.
So, if they're investigating me, they would contact my provider and get my data if they have a warrant. Well, sometimes they try without it, but a lot of providers and software companies have really cracked down on that and won't give it without a warrant, thank God. But with this, basically, they just ask for the location at the time and then do it in reverse. So they get all the data of the people and then cross it off to see if that's who they're looking for, which is totally backwards and, in my opinion, unethical. I mean,
in violation of the Fourth Amendment.
Yeah.
You don't gather everybody's personal information and then sift through it to decide who's guilty. And I don't know what else gets caught in the net. It's personal stuff. Well, why? Oh, this shows that you were at a psychologist's office for an hour. Stuff that's private.
Well, it puts you on the defensive of having to explain where you were when you're not you haven't committed a crime, you haven't done anything. It's not even accused of anything or suspected. They just want you to explain where you were for the hell of it.
Well, what about a woman who is going to showing up at a divorce attorney or a battered women's shelter or something like that when that data starts getting sifted through?
Well, I would hope they would use their best judgment, but I'm not sure.
When's that going to start?
Well, and of course, there's a lot of left-leaning information about this right now just because of what happened in Texas. But I'm not going to get into the merits of the abortion law in Texas because we don't have the time or the patience to deal with that. But part of it is that, if you help somebody get to a place to have an abortion or something like that, you can be charged as well, which is why Uber and Lyft and all of those things have spoken out and whatnot. Well, something like this would put drivers at risk of being, if they were going to enforce that, when otherwise they wouldn't even know. And they're just using a reverse tool to try to find someone who has committed a crime. That's what's sick to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you have to turn your phone off. Now to go and say, okay, we want to know every phone that's pinged in this location. Oh man, that's amazing to me. For keyword search,
even if the courts were to, because they have surprised me on some of their stuff, right? Like some of their Fourth Amendment rulings are just abhorrent. But like, as a user yourself, how could you support that?
Look, if you say the Second Amendment applies to modern technology, and it does. If you say the First Amendment applies to modern technology, and it does, you have to say the Fourth Amendment applies to modern technology. To apply, to not apply your papers and your personal effects. Oh, well, that doesn't include cellular data. No, that's mine.
Well, their argument is that you've pinged in a public place, which is true. I mean, yeah, sure, I was in a public place, but like, I'm in a public place with my purse, and you can't just open it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's one thing if, okay, you show up on a camera in a public place, right? And that person gives the information over to law enforcement. That's not your camera being used against you. It's like them coming into your house, grabbing your security camera, and then reviewing it.
Okay, well, we don't own the data, though. The company does, which is the whole problem. Like, this goes into part of another topic that I kind of had adjacent to this, and we've also talked about on the show with the photos, like uploading to the cloud, that Apple was going to scan them. They've backed off on that, but their argument is like, once it's in the cloud, it's on their server and they own it. Well, the same thing goes for the geofencing. That's and any data that Google and Apple and whoever else, Facebook, they say that once it's on their server, and that's why the law enforcement entities go to them. Like, they own it. So how is it different than the security camera example you offered? Because
they would need a warrant, or the owner of that security camera would have to hand that over. Willingly, even if they willingly hand it over. If the missing girl from that was living in Florida, Gabby, whatever her name is, we were kind of talking before the show about that. Every gas station between Wyoming and Florida is pulling their security footage right now and looking at it. Probably not waiting for a warrant, because everybody's trying to find this pretty little girl. But that's them willingly giving the information over. So no, there really is no difference if Facebook is handing the information over to law enforcement, if Google's handing that information over to law enforcement willingly and without a warrant. My problem would be a judge authorizing a warrant for that information just based on a location. You need to give me something else. Well,
I totally agree.
We know something happened here, so give me all the data from this person from 10 o'clock to midnight. I need every person that pinged here.
So your issue is not with the companies complying with the warrant. Your issue, what you're saying is the root of the issue starts where the federal government likely, or the law enforcement entity, goes to the judge and says, sign this, and the judge says yes.
Yeah. I think warrant authorization has gotten way too loose.
Yeah.
You need to... I need to move to a smaller county and run for judge. Let me be on duty and say, hey, Judge Roberts, we need you to sign off on this. Like, all right, what do you have? Nope, not enough. Don't wake me up with this BS again. I mean, that just eliminated me running for judge. Dave Roberts is soft on crime. But how often does it happen, Jessica?
Well, I mean, just about every time I'm at the courthouse, there's somebody from some local agency walking in to get a warrant signed.
Google revealed for the first time in August 2021 that it received 11,554 georeference location warrants from law enforcement agencies in 2020, up from almost 8,400 in 2019 and 982 in 2018.
That's too many.
That's a lot. That's not individuals.
Well,
that's locations.
Sure. I mean, one of those could include 1,000 people, or I mean, you don't even know how wide and expansive they were.
Well, hell, if it was during one of these protests, it could include tens of thousands of people.
Right.
And they're going to sift through all the data for all these 10,000 people.
Well, and the problem is once they crack that door, like let's say, they got the geofence location for, let's say 1,000 people. Well, then let's say they narrow it down to 500. Well, then they're going to want more information for, like, it's this web that's going to spread out.
Yeah. And what else gets caught up in that web?
Well, everything.
Okay. Well, we were looking into a murder, but we found a text to you between you and your weed dealer. We were looking for a missing girl, but look at this. This guy was talking to a hooker. And the other
horror.
the other people that get caught in that web, that, who was he texting? Well, let's look into that person. Let's look who was he texting? So, yeah, once that door is open, they go to every room. Now, I don't know the legal basis if they'd get somebody 2-3 people down the line and find a crime they commit and say, well, what was the basis of the warrant? Oh, we were looking for a missing girl from Wyoming. What? Well, then we found out that this guy bought a dime bag, and we arrested him for it. And then we used that for another search warrant to go to his house and found drug-related products or objects and locked him up. This is a huge workaround for the Fourth Amendment. Huge workaround. And that's what the Justice Department wants. They want a police state. There's nothing that the DOJ would love more than cameras in every home.
Sure.
Just go ahead, make sure that all your windows are open all the time so we can observe you all the time.
The more
it's
they
for
have
your
to
safety.
ask for, right.
It's for your safety. God, Orwell was right.
We're in trouble.
Oh, yeah, we are. Yeah, we are.
And, I mean, I know we're running long on time and probably won't have enough time to go into everything about the companies, but, like, the more the companies offer and collect, or the more they try to advance and collect, the more at risk we are because we've opted into the agreement. And, like, they allow us to opt out of certain stuff, but they,
your phone is always listening.
Right. How many times have we seen that doesn't really matter?
Right. Look, Apple has a pop-up window for iPhones to ask people for permission for tracking apps, and that's true. Like if I'm playing golf on my iPhone, I've got a golf game on it, and it'll pop up. It wants to know your location. No. Why the hell do I need to tell them where I am to play golf on my iPhone? Mm-hmm. Same thing. I mean, it says to allow only while using the app or to disallow. And what these companies do is they make it very difficult to operate whatever app you're using unless you authorize data or geo tracking. That's just, they make it clunky. They make it difficult to use. Obviously, you can't use Google Maps if it doesn't know where you are.
And from the business side, it all comes down to ads and revenue because they want to know where we are and why and what we're doing so that they can sell that information to people who want to advertise and, get in front of their customer base. And it's like $350 billion digital ad industry every year?
Sure.
And I mean, sure, profit is driving it. They continue to collect or want to collect more stuff because the money is there. But
look, yeah, if from a profit standpoint, I would really benefit for any time someone said, boy, it's hot in here. When they open up Facebook, there's an ad for Dr. Cool. Mm-hmm. That'd be great for me, wouldn't it?
But I think
ethically, I don't support it, but...
No, but blaming it all on profit lets the government off far too easy, because how many times have we seen about, like, you know, high up tech officials meeting with DOJ people? And I mean, like, there is a, like, how can we use this information? How can we partner? It's to blame it all on profit would be naive.
Well, sure. But the government's taking advantage of it. All right, so say and this is true. I put had an air conditioner that we installed in what is an adult novelty store. The geo-tracking or geofencing, whatever they call it, would ping me in that location. Well, what were you doing there? Well, take it even further with privacy. With if I would run for office, and like Dave Roberts frequents adult novelty stores. Well, my first answer would be, well, it's a local business.
Here's a question for you, though. So law enforcement gathers all this data. They do their investigation. They arrest whoever they want. They close the case. All of that information is now public record.
Yes, it is all FOIA available.
And I'm not saying that I don't think it should be, because then you get into the whole NSA stuff, oh my gosh. NSA level stuff. But
you're saying it shouldn't be available to law enforcement to begin with.
Well, no, but like if you're talking about a local agency or a state level agency where they're not doing the whole national security deflection thing where they say you can't have it, then anyone can access that information and suddenly it's a weapon. Like you said, for running for office, in divorce, in custody agreements, like.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Everything that used to be private is now going to be trackable. Now, look, I think there is a place for tracking people's phones. With the girl that's missing, and her boyfriend drove back from Wyoming by himself. Yeah, pinging his phone. We have a suspect. Here's the evidence we have. This is where we last know we saw them together. She's no longer with them. Let's ping those phones, and and they have a specific warrant on specific people to find out the locations. Absolutely. And then we say, okay, well, he was at this gas station, or the phone was at this gas station for 15 minutes in, I don't know, Idaho. Okay, we're going to go to this specific gas station with a specific warrant for the security cameras between this time and this time.
Narrow.
That's the proper use of this.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, we could talk about this all day. The case down here that we talked about where the guy spent 3 years in jail before he was vindicated for rape. They used his cell phone information to prove he didn't do anything, or her cell phone information. But again, narrow, specific.
Yeah, the Fourth Amendment doesn't say they can never have access to your personal effects without a warrant, and warrants require probable cause. So, in the case of the girl that's missing, okay, it's specific, narrow. This is what we want to track. In fact, her next of kin, I guarantee, would sign off and say, yes, track her phone. Mm-hmm. I don't think they need to. She's reported missing. I don't think they need the excuse to track the phone. I mean, That's right. There you go. So you contact Apple or whatever she's using, and her Instagram that's tagging where she is and everything else. That we want to know where this phone was and how long. And that's narrow and specific. And as a judge, I would sign off on it with all my law degree that I have.
Sure.
We'll sign off on it. But as we're running along, Jessica, what are your closing thoughts?
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't have a happy one. I watched the testimony before the Senate committee about the victims of Larry Nassar. And it got me thinking, and we're all familiar with the case. We talked about the case when it was going on. That I read a New York Magazine article, and there's sections called "The Cut," and it went into everything they did. And it's awful. It's a compelling read, but it's awful. Somehow these senators made this hearing about themselves. If they had 3 minutes, they would talk for 2 minutes, 55 seconds, and then one of the victims, these girls that are trying to speak up, would be like, "Yes, Senator." And it was all about FaceTime for them, and instead of vindication for the victims. And it's just the disgusting side of politics that these Senate hearings are about nothing but FaceTime for them, because they know they're going to be on every news network, and they all want the best soundbite. Mm-hmm. And it's the disgusting side of politics, because it's a very human story, and I don't care if you're left, right, independent. It's a very human story, and for them to try to take the spotlight away from these victims and put it on themselves, it was just absolutely disgusting. But on that cheery note, I want to thank Jessica Szilagyi, my partner in crime, Eric Cumby, our awesome editor. I want to thank all of you for listening. I'm Dave Roberts. Have a great week.